Welcome to Module 4, Identifying and Overcoming Obstacles to Critical Thinking. This is one of the most important modules we have to present in this series. We have to remember that critical thinking is a process, and that students may be very willing to think critically, yet find themselves stuck in that process. Let's take a look at why they might get stuck and try to think of ways to help them recover from the obstacles that threaten their success.
In Module 2, we refer to a few critical thinking models. If you went through some of those pages in the workbook or visited the links, these might be familiar, but let's review a couple. The Bloom's taxonomy model suggests that students move through levels of thinking in order. Skills like remembering and understanding are lower level thinking, and skills like evaluating and creating are higher order thinking. The Foundation of Critical Thinking website has an interactive model to illustrate Richard Paul and Linda Elder's elements of thought that suggests that we might move in between the 8 elements rather than moving through in a particular order. Their material is very in-depth and allows for ordered thinking, but they truly exemplify the idea that critical thinking is a process. If we think about accomplishing our outcomes as a process, it might look something like this. It might be that students analyze and interpret, make a decision, and then evaluate their own decision. Or it might be that they evaluate and explain what they've just analyzed and draw a conclusion based on that reasoning process. But regardless of the path they take to approach their tasks or assignment, there are obstacles that can stop them on that path.
There are many reasons students get stuck in the thinking process. In common terms, they may encounter bias or selective perception. They might overgeneralize or stereotype. It's easier for them to make hasty conclusions and poor assumptions, and just as easy to oversimplify. If we look at the research, we'll find that other obstacles students face when thinking critically are inadequate reasons or fallacies in presented information. These include faulty analogies, false cause, argument distortion or exaggeration, personal attack, appeals to tradition or pity or popularity. Students may be hindered by background beliefs, insufficiently grounded beliefs, loyalty, herd instincts, culture, partisan mindset, superstition, wishful thinking, self-deception, rationalization, procrastination, denial, and the list goes on. And one more, and this one is really important, the myth of the right answer. We know that many courses do have a right answer and perhaps only one right answer. But sometimes when we ask students to use critical thinking skills, there simply is no single right answer. We see an example of this when we want them to share and explain their opinions, or perhaps when we want them to choose a side in a controversy. Students may think in these examples that there are right and wrong answer to just about anything. They fear being wrong, the result, they get stuck.
So then, what can we do? How can we help? Let's first go back to Module 1, where we talked about the penny and the water experiment. We can set the bar high, but give students the chance to meet those high expectations, and most importantly, once they know what's possible, remind them of those possibilities. In the case of critical thinking, ask probing questions. You might say things like, but what if? What do you think would happen if? What else might have caused that? Is there anything that could be more important in this story? And how can we prove this? How can we find out what is true and not true?
Also, in Module 1, we pointed out that students have different learning styles or preferences, and that today's learners are actually pretty different than we may have been when we were students. This is important. Learn more about those differences between generations of students and between learning styles. Learn how to recognize what works with your students each semester. What worked last semester may not work as well with the students you have now. Learn how to get them to practice thinking in ways that work for them.
And be sure to provide a safe learning environment. Allow mistakes. If there is no right or wrong answer, tell them. When there is a right answer and they are wrong, encourage them to dig further to see if there's another way to look at it. Know the skills included in the QEP outcomes or in the other critical thinking modules. When you catch students using the skills, identify what they are doing and applaud them for thinking critically.
Just as students face more than one obstacle when they try to think critically, we have at our disposal more than one way to help them overcome those obstacles. The takeaway this time, Learn how your students get stuck and learn how to help them overcome those obstacles.
This concludes Module 4, Identifying and Overcoming Obstacles to Critical Thinking. We're glad you joined us and hope you'll keep the conversation going.